Hey everyone, Dr. Frunky here with an awesome new knife consult video for you. In front of us is the Jake Hoback Kwaiback. This is really exciting to finally get this knife in hand. Jake Hoback's knives are hailed throughout the community as having excellent quality, excellent smoothness, and just an overall really well-built feeling. And so I'm happy to get this one in hand. If you follow my channel, you'll know that a few weeks or a few months ago, I did the MK Ultra, the very, very small version of this knife. But this is the full-size Kwaiback. Now, that word comes from a combination of Jake Hoback's last name, as well as the Kwaiken-style blade that this is named after. The Kwaiken is a folding version of the Japanese Kaiken, the short sword. That's a step down from the wakizashi, which is a step down from the katana. So this knife, in its truest sense, is intended as a close quarters tactical and combat knife. And that is exactly what he's executed here. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's go ahead and figure out what we're working with here. We'll bust out the ruler. Up front, we've got right at about 3.5 inches of cutting length, maybe a hair over 3.5 inches, about 4 inches back to the pivot. Overall handle length, you're looking at right at about very close to 5.5 inches, just a little bit less, maybe 5.25 inches, something like that, with the grip space being around 4.5 inches. So very comfortable overall size, very large overall size, right at about 9 inches. So a big knife. The overall thickness, we'll go ahead and bust out the old calipers here. Thickness is 0.58 inches, so a little bit on the thicker side. I would say average is about 0.5 inches, so a little bit on the thicker side, but not overly thick. And that's not bad at all. Let's go ahead and break this knife down anatomically. We talked about up front there is that 3.6, 3.5 inch cutting length blade of CPM cru-wear steel. Let's go ahead and see what the blade stock is on this guy. 0.186 blade stock on that. So really, really thick blade stock done in a flat grind. It's really more of a compound grind, just like the classic Japanese tanto. There is a flat grind here and there is a flat grind here. There is a line right there that goes out to the tanto tip, and it does provide some reinforcement there. It is a very strong and aggressive looking blade shape. Absolutely, this is intended for combat purposes. The upswept nature of this blade is very, very different than a lot of other knives out there. So I'm going to go ahead and bring out a few others for an overall size comparison here. Here's a paramilitary 2. Not a small knife by any means, but you can see, look at the angulation of the blade and how that works in terms of the carry. Even this knife, this is a 0392. A Hinderer design knife that's supposed to be flexible into that sort of combat role, but again, the blade is somewhat oriented straight forward. Here's a Shirogorov F3. That blade drop point is pointed slightly more downward, and so you're starting to see a pattern here. But then when I come to a knife like this, here we go, we've got the Hellhound Tanto. This is from Microtech right here. Again, this knife is intended ideally as a combat knife, so if you look at the way that the blade is upswept and how it fits in the hand, you will see that this knife is not truly intended as what we would consider an everyday carry kind of a knife. This is a really purpose-built tactical knife in the truest sense. And so it makes sense that my good buddy Mars_Tac, my good buddy on Instagram, sent this along. He's in the military, and so he has this one as his sort of go-to-war knife, and it's super awesome, really tough, and very excited to share it with you. All right, back to the blade. It's done in this interesting Cerakote. I think this is supposed to be sort of a water-type camouflage action. I will leave it to your imagination for you to think about what this actually looks like. Yeah, you may be catching on here. So a little bit of a white gel on top of this dark background, some white cream. Okay, I'm just going to leave it there. So I'm not a huge fan of the way that looks, but that's personal taste. I think this would look better either in a full black DLC or in just the stonewash finish. But that is really neither here nor there. This is all personal preference with a stylized version like this. Moving back to the pivot, It runs on ball bearing washers, and it is actually very smooth. It's actually the Hoback, the thrust washers. I have not taken this knife apart. I don't really know what they look like on the inside, but it is ridiculously smooth. I love the action. Everyone talks about how smooth these knives are, and this one absolutely lives up to the hype. This is very, very, very smooth. This is smoother than the 0392. This is as smooth or smoother than the Shirogorov that I have right now. Very, very nice action going on here. I don't even have to move the knife. It just closes itself if I just pivot the handle just a tiny bit. Super nice. It's got this very heavy-duty pivot hardware going on right here. Very solid. On the inside, you can see the diameter of the pivot is nice and thick, so that's really nice. It is a flipper deployment only. It is very easy to deploy. The detent is a little bit soft, I'm not going to lie, so you can halfway deploy it, but if you give it, a purposeful push, it's going to go out because it's so smooth, and that's pretty nice. The flipper tab itself, I was worried was going to be a little bit sharp, but for whatever reason, it's not uncomfortable to do that all day. I think it's because the detent is light enough that that doesn't push into your finger too hard. Right there at the top of the blade, there is a little bit of jimping, and it does provide some traction right in that area, and your finger sinks right in to that choil right down there. Speaking of that choil, we can go back to the handles here and take a look. Up front, we have some beautifully milled carbon fiber. Absolutely stunning to look at, some of the high quality carbon fiber with no voids. On the back is a titanium frame lock with the lock bar insert. It's got a carbon fiber insert in the handle here, and it's got the Hoback spring clip, which actually functions very nicely. I will say that it slides in and out of the pocket easily because it's got a nice amount of spring to it. However, it's very thin off the knife, so that's interesting to me because this is definitely intended more for the military purposes, and I think you would want to have a slightly taller clip to accommodate any type of pocket or strap or wherever you're going to be putting this knife. So that's interesting to me. On the inside of the knife, this is probably one of the most impressive things about this one. Let me get a light here and shine it a little bit for you. On the inside of the knife, that's a really bright light, sorry about that. On the inside of the knife, there is some really nice internal milling. This light is probably just ruining the whole thing, but the whole thing is milled out on the inside. The carbon fiber scale is extensively milled. The frame lock side is extensively milled on the inside, and it's just super nice. It just shows that he put a bunch of attention to detail and to carry. So how much did that weight save right there? How light are we looking at right here? This is a full-size knife here at 4.6 ounces. So a nice carry size. It gives it a little bit of substantial solidity, but it's not overly heavy. That carbon fiber scale, I'm sure, helps a whole lot. You'd probably be looking at 1.5 ounces or something more in the full titanium version. So how does this thing carry? Well, it carries okay. Like I mentioned, the spring clip does work pretty well on any type of pant. There's a nice amount of spring to it right there, but it's not very tall. So in some of my jeans, the material will bunch up, which is a bit of a problem to me because the knife already is very prominent if you were to get it sitting as low as it could possibly go. That is a lot of knife and a fairly aggressive edge or tip sticking out right there. And with this camouflage, it's kind of an aggressive overall profile. I wish it sat a little bit lower in the pocket, but that's really just my personal preference. I think you could do a lowrider clip here if you just did a bent over type with these two screws. So that could function really well. The ergonomics are actually excellent. In the hand, this is very comfortable. My hand just wraps around it. All the edges are chamfered and very smooth. This little bit of sort of knurling or jimping or what have you back here fits into the fat of the hand and it provides some traction. And then your thumb falls right onto that jimping and your finger right into that choil, and it's very comfortable. Now, this is not ideal, again, for EDC tasks. I noticed that with the blade pointing that way, I have to angle my hand a little bit more to use it. So this is not really an ideal knife for EDC, but I do think that this is a great tactical knife for military and self-defense purposes, and I think Jake Hoback has executed this very nicely. It's an excellently made knife right here in the USA. Well, Well, thanks for watching the video, guys. Click like and subscribe to my channel here. Go check me out on Instagram at Dr. Frunky. And as always, take care.